Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Should Have Gone Pro podcast. And boy, do we have a big one for you today. Um, we thought, well, some stuff is kind of died down a little bit in sports before we get into our March Madness craziness. We had a little bit of a lull here, and we thought, what better time to bring out the coveted list that we ask every sports fan nowadays. Um, the top 10 basketball players of all time, in your opinion. So we're gonna go through our list today. We're gonna debate those. We already saw each other's list beforehand, and I know it's gonna get a little heated. I'm looking at some parts of this list, but it should be fun, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Brock, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, no, this is certainly like the highlight of any sports fan, the top 10 basketball players of all time list. And I think we have all the same players on our list. I just think it's a different order for each one of us. So it's certainly going to be interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember if any of them are in the same spot or not, but I know that we have a similar group of guys here. There's a couple guys that I feel like are right on the edge, or if their careers, like in the future, when their careers wrapping up, it might be different. Like for example, I don't either of us have Steph Curry or Kevin Durant on our list, or even Giannis or Kawhi. Um, those are four guys that really, if they screw up their resume some more, played at such a high level for longer than they could sneak on that list potentially, but especially KD and Steph. But those are some guys that just aren't at that level yet. Spoiler alert, I think we only have one active player on our list for both of us. So, um, yeah, this is gonna be a good episode. Might as well just step into it right now. Number 10 on our list. I believe we both had different picks. Number 10, and I picked mine based on what I've seen. Um, I understand that this might be a little bit low for him, but this is how I feel as the pure basketball player. I have Larry Bird at number 10, and I hope people didn't just click off the episode right now, getting upset at me. But um, I understand Larry Bird was the Celtics in the '80s. He was the leader of that group. The 3-point guy before the 3-point line really became a thing. It was a thing, but not as big as this today, obviously. Um, he was one of the greatest shooters in basketball. Um, the reason I have him low is I kind of look at the whole resume, and it's more than just being the basketball player on the court, is off the court too, and um, I just feel like the guys ahead of him had stronger resumes and left more of an impact. Obviously, Larry Bird has left a crazy. I mean, every guy on the top 10 list has left an impact, so it's not really much of a question there. But I feel like Larry Bird has always been a little bit clumped up with Magic Johnson together, and we didn't look at Larry Bird by himself. Um, Again, none of these guys were slouches on the list, so it's hard to even get nitpicky at this point. But number 10, I had Larry Bird, and I feel fairly confident in keeping him there. I could argue moving him up to 9 or 8, but once you move it up to that top 5, I feel like it's harder for me to agree with him fitting in that group just based on their overall um, the all around games that these guys had, and the impact on both the stat sheets, the the awards and everything. I have Larry Bird at number 10. I don't know how you feel about that, and what's your number 10?
He's a little bit higher on my list. My number 10 is what I consider really. I mean, I don't really think there's much of an argument here. The greatest power forward of all time, Tim Duncan. Um, I mean, I just think it's hard to look. I mean, I feel like he's one of those players that doesn't necessarily get enough love because I mean, toward the end of his career, he wasn't obviously the same player as he was when he was in the prime, when he was in his prime. But I mean, he was part of a Spurs dynasty, five-time champion, 3-time Finals MVP. I mean, one of the greatest, or one of the best two-way players of all time. When you look at what he did from not only an offensive standpoint, but rebounding and defense too. I mean, Tim Duncan's is really as good as it comes. I mean, those Spurs teams. I mean, they haven't won, at least to my knowledge, haven't won a ring without Tim Duncan. At least recently, I know that for a fact. So I mean, it's hard to put. I mean, he's got the individual statistics as well as the accolades and the championship rings, and I think make him a very deserving member of this list. So that's why I have him as my number 10.
Yeah, I feel like with Duncan. By the way, I have him as my number 9 on my list. Duncan at number 9 for me, but um, I feel like people either really put him super high up or they don't even put him on the list at all. So I'm happy that we both put him. I feel like in a fair spot here. Um, I feel like because of the way that he carried himself and just the identity of those Spurs teams really left. Um, didn't really leave as big of a impact on everybody as it should have. Um, he was a super quiet guy who kept to himself and just got buckets, and it wasn't flashy. He's called the big fundamental for a reason. So I think that's kind of why people don't really look at him in that conversation as much as they should. Um, but I definitely agree with him being up there. Um, I mean, it's you look at everything put together. It's hard to think any other power forward can be in that debate for the best power forward. I mean, you got Garnett in that debate too, but I don't think they really stack up as much. Tim Duncan was those Spurs teams. I think you take Duncan off those Spurs teams, they're nowhere near the same. They probably wouldn't even get a ring. Um, so I feel like that everyone that watched basketball in that time, Tim Duncan was kind of just he was kind of there, and if you won, you weren't upset about it, but you weren't. It was just you know. But Tim Duncan number 9 feels fair to me. Um, I wish people would kind of give him more love post playing career than they do because I think he deserves it and he put those Spurs teams on the map for a long time. So I mean he won a title in one of his last years beating that Miami team. So um, yeah, I have Tim Duncan number 9 above Larry Bird. So who's your number 9?
My number 9 is Bill Russell for the Boston Celtics. I mean we talk about Tom Brady having a lot of rings. I mean, this guy's got one for each finger and then an extra one to put on whatever one he wants. I mean, 11 championships. It's hard to argue with that. I mean, 5-time MVP. It's just crazy. I mean, I think this could be where I get a little bit of pushback, but I just think that he's not quite. I mean, you'll see how my list kind of plays out here, but I mean, I just think when the next two guys, I just kind of take into consideration there was nobody really around like these two at the time that they played. And which I mean, I don't take away from it. The NBA was just a different game back then. But I mean, I feel like you can't have a top 10 list arguably without Bill Russell. I mean, when you look at not only the team success, winning 11 championships, but the individual success he had, and he did it as a coach too, player coach. So I mean, yeah, I think he's as deserving as anybody on this list, certainly.
Yeah. Again, I have him at number 8 on my list. So Bill Russell's number 8 for me. So we're kind of going back and forth here a little bit, but um, yeah, I mean, if you look at the impact that Bill Russell had in kind of popularizing basketball, with another guy on this list around that same time frame as well, that we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, I mean, Bill Russell, you can't deny 11 rings in a 13-year span is just absurd. Um, it's unfathomable nowadays. They won 8 in a row too. So I remember looking back as a kid in the record books, and they'd be like, "How did Boston win 8 in a row?" Like nobody was even close to that in in the current days. Back when I was learning about basketball and stuff, but and he really pushed the color barrier too in the NBA, and was a big advocate for the equal rights and everything, and really popularized basketball a lot. I think it's hard to disagree with Bill Russell. You could say that he wasn't the best offensively. He was a fantastic defender, but back then they didn't need him to be shooting threes because there wasn't threes. So he was just guarding the paint and getting putback dunks. That's all you really needed him for. So um, yeah, Bill Russell, one of the most dominant players ever, and I mean, the fact that he has 11 rings is just kind of hard to comprehend when we talk about the guys at the top having 4, 5, 6 rings, and then he's got 11. But um, how do you feel before we get to your number 8? How do you feel about people's arguments about they were playing against plumbers and electricians back in the day? Do you take the stats like back in the day with a grain of salt, or do you see it as what it is and level of competition back then versus today? How do you kind of approach that?
I mean, I get where they come from. I mean, I think you have to look at it with with a little bit of a critical eye. I don't think you can take it at face value because they certainly weren't playing. I mean, I think back when Bill Russell played, there was only like 9 or 10 teams, maybe 12. Um,
Yeah.
so but again, I mean, the results speak for themselves. I mean, it's hard to. You mentioned 13-year span to win 11 rings. I mean, the guy is a tremendous player. That's not easy to come by. I don't care who you're playing. And I mean, there still was some quality players that played in his era. So I mean, I think you do have to look at it, and you can't take it completely at face value because, again, I mean, the level of competition now and the way the game is now, it's completely different. There's more teams, a lot better players. So I mean, I think when you just take it back and you look at it just like a purely basketball fan perspective, you have to just, I mean, admire what the guy did. I mean, 11 championships in 13 seasons is just crazy. And I mean, he was obviously a big part of all those championship runs. So, I mean, I think it's deserving. And I mean, I understand why people say, oh, yeah, they're playing against carpenters and guys off the street, but I mean, they still
Mhm.
won 11 championships, went 8 in a row, which is just crazy.
Yeah. I agree with what you said about that. There is a point where that argument is pretty valid. And they were playing against a lot less competition, and also the NBA wasn't nearly as popular, so there wasn't these guys coming out of school nearly as much saying I want to be NBA players like there are today. There's guys all over the country want to do that. So, um, but it is interesting to look at. And you see these crazy stats, and I do take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, just thinking about the level of competition back in the day. Um, but there's at some point you have to say, okay, like this is impressive no matter who you're playing. Um, so I understand where people come from, but I still think that these guys from the '60s would still do well in today's game. Probably not put up 50 points and 50 rebounds like Wilt Chamberlain did and stuff like that, and win 11 rings in 13 seasons. But I still think they'd be dominant enough for that argument wouldn't really be valid anymore. That's just my opinion, though. I guess we'll never know. But um, who was your number 8 on your list?
Number 8 on my list. It's actually a perfect segue that you mentioned him. I've got Wilt still at number 8 on my list. Um, Obviously not nearly as many. I mean, obviously not as many championships as Bill Russell because no one's even really came close to sniffing that total. Only won 2 rings, but I think you have to put him, or at least I personally think you have to put him above a guy like Bill Russell just because, I mean, the guy scored 100 points in a game. That's not going to be even come close to being touched again. I mean, I was just looking at his career numbers. He averages, I mean, 30 a game and 23 rebounds a game. I don't think, I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, had some of the craziest scoring seasons in NBA history. And I think when you just look at some of just I mean, he averaged 50 one season. I mean, the guy
Mhm.
was just different. I mean, really a cheat code. I mean, at that point, I mean, I think he was was like super good at track and field too at Kansas. I mean, just what a freak athlete that guy was at 7'1" to dominate the way he did in the NBA. And I mean, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he's incredible. I mean, I think certainly just very, very deserving to be on this list. And I mean, I think it's when you look at just the impact he had in terms of just as a scoring threat, rebounding threat. I think you have to put. I mean, I at least personally put him above Bill Russell for that, just because he was a lot more of a scorer. And I mean, some of his stat lines are just ridiculous. I mean, 50 points a game in a season, dropped 100. I mean, it's just unreal. And I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be a player, obviously, I mean, even anywhere close to touching any of those numbers ever. So I mean, yeah, I think you gotta give it to him, and I mean, he's again played a big impact in the history of the sport, and I mean, he's got a couple records that are never even going to come close to being touched. So I think when you're rewriting the history books like that, you belong on this list somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've when you're watching games on TV on ESPN or TNT or stuff like that, they show like all time stats. Whenever they do, it's like Wilt and then a gap and then whoever's next after that. So it's kind of crazy to think about just how insane the stats were. Again, I didn't realize how well our list lined up because I have Wilt at 7. Um, so I have him one spot ahead of you. So we keep segueing together. Um, but yeah, I do. I have Wilt at 7, and I mean, you can go back and read Wilt Chamberlain stories um, that they sound like they're made up, but they're not. This guy was just an absolute freak of nature, and I do put him above of Bill Russell because I feel like he had a more complete game. Um, he wasn't fortunate enough to be in the situations like Bill Russell was, where he could win that many championships in a row. And when those two matched up, it was always a fantastic matchup. But um, yeah, I mean, it's when with the game the way it was back then. Obviously, you weren't expecting Will to pull it from 3 or anything like that, and he knew exactly what to do and dominated at it. I mean, you could argue he's the most dominant player ever, and I think you have a pretty strong argument there. And it's it kind of seems like I said before, it kind of feels like it's like a story that like a made up story that you're hearing all these crazy things about Wilt, and he just walk on the court and easily put up 50 and 30 rebounds and act like it's nothing. So um, Wilt Chamberlain at 7 feels like a pretty strong spot to put him at. Um, I don't really have a lot of complaints about either of our lists so far. So how are you feeling about number 7 here?
Yeah, you got. I think the words you used last night were overrated when you described this guy a little bit. I've got Larry Legend, Larry Bird at number 7. Um, I think. I mean, again, I think when you look at just the impact he had on the game, I mean, he was. I mean, he was in the same era as Magic Johnson, and I mean, the Celtics and Lakers teams until MJ came and the passing of the torch. But I mean, it was the Lakers and the Celtics every year going back and forth. And I mean, you had to beat if you made it out. I mean, in the Eastern Conference, you had to beat the Celtics to get to the finals. And then on the other, I mean, if you got to the finals from the East, you had to beat the Lakers. So I mean, it was just those two teams going back and forth in the '80s. And I mean, I think Larry Bird's another one of those guys. Maybe his career could have been extended a little bit more if he didn't have all those back problems. I mean, I remember I was watching a thing on TikTok. There was that famous 1992 Olympic Games practice for the Dream Team. Larry Bird was laying in the corner and he couldn't play. Or couldn't participate in the practice because his back was so messed up. And I mean, it's just like what could have been if he'd have been able to keep his back healthy and played for a couple more years. But I mean, 3-time champ, 3-time MVP, 13 years in the NBA, 12-time All-Star. I mean, I think that people say one of the best trash talkers in the game. I mean, I remember in our comm class, one of our teachers said before one of the 3-point contests, he walked in the locker room and was just kind of staring at everybody, and they're like, "Larry, what the hell are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm just looking to see who's going to get second." And then went out there and destroyed everybody. And I mean, just confidence. I do think. I mean, I think obviously when you look, can you compare him and the other players of his era? I think Magic Johnson, a better player, more complete player. But I mean, Larry Bird was no slouch. I was just looking at his career numbers. I mean, 24, 10, and 6 as a small forward. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Kind of that do-it-all guy. Did it on the defensive end of the floor too for Boston. So yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I could see a little bit of pushback there for Larry Bird. Oh, how do you put Larry Bird above Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain? But I mean, I don't know. I just think in terms of impact he had on the game, the competition he was playing against. I mean, to get 3 rings in that era was, I mean, it's pretty remarkable, and I mean, very very deserving. But I mean, he hell of a player. I have no complaints about putting him ahead of those 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things in this list you can switch up, like some minor details, and I'd still be perfectly okay with it. Um, Larry Bird's kind of one of those anomalies. Kind of, I feel like him and Tim Duncan are two guys that get shuffled around a lot on people's lists. And a lot of people have different opinions about them, so it's kind of hard to find like a stable spot for those guys. Um, but I mean, they're both top 10 players of all time, so nothing to complain about there. But my number 6 is Shaq. I have Shaq at number 6. If you just go back and simply look at him playing in the late 90s for Orlando, and then when he was time with the Lakers, you could tell this guy was the most dominant guy on the court every time he went out there. Um, he was one of those guys there. Nobody knew how to guard him. He was just too big and too dominant in the paint. I mean, everyone knows Shaq. There's not really a whole lot to say about that, but I do have him over Wilt and Bill Russell, partly due to the level of play, and I feel like he's very comparable as far as his statistics go, and then his impact on the game. I mean, everyone knows Shaq. He's done a lot for the game outside of off the court, so I feel pretty confident putting Shaq here. I mean, he has the 4 rings, MVP, finals MVPs. Him and Kobe, I would say we can get into this debate on a different episode, but I would say that they're the best duo ever over Michael and Scotty. But that's a debate for a different day. But yeah, it's hard to think of anyone who could really stop Shaq in the post, both offensively and defensively. So, and he's still a great ambassador for the game today. You see him in every other commercial on TV. So, I mean, he there's no sponsorship deal he won't take. But, yeah, as far as a complete basketball player, I have Shaq number 6, and I feel pretty confident in that. The only knock you can put on him is obviously he couldn't shoot well, and his free throws were not the best, but the guy would just dunk on everyone in the site, and yeah, I think you can argue he's number 6 pretty easily on this list. So that's where I got him.
Yeah, that's exactly where I've got him. I mean, well said. You know, should have had 2 MVPs. I think. I mean, yeah, Steve Nash had that one year that he got it over Shaq, but I mean, when you look at it, I think Shaq statistically had the better season. But you know, to each their own. Whatever. Steve Nash still a tremendous player, but yeah, I mean, hard to say anything else. I mean, the guy was just ridiculous. I mean, the 3-peat with the Lakers. I mean, to make it to the finals with Orlando. You know, kind of that falling out there, went to LA with Kobe. I think that's really when he became, I mean, he was already a superstar, but I mean, when you get to LA, you have a personality like Shaq, the kind of player he was. I mean, LA loves Shaq. And I mean, he's just, yeah, I think I almost love Shaq more off the court than I love Shaq on the court.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue. I think, again, one of those guys you could say with Wilt Chamberlain is one of the most dominant players, at least physically dominant players in NBA history. I mean, no one was moving Shaq. I mean, some of his dunks are just ridiculous. I remember watching that highlight of him with just that guy from the Knicks got in his way and he just shoved him down like he was a little boy. Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, a man among boys out there. And I mean, yeah, you got to love Shaq. I think, you know, just all around, he seems like a super nice dude. You know, got a couple, you know, Sharif, plays college basketball. I mean, just pretty you know, good dad. I think all around great dude. And I mean, you love to see that level of success. And I mean, yeah, I think yeah, 6. I think 6 is a fair spot, especially when we start to get into the top 5, the 5 players that we at least think are above him.
Yeah, and all the backboards he broke too. He broke several backboards, and it was the one where he pulled it down so hard the shot clock hit him in the back of the head. And I could not believe that when I first saw it. It's absolutely insane to even comprehend pulling that thing down to the ground. Unreal. So yeah, just to recap my list, I have 10 Larry Bird, 9 Tim Duncan, 8 Bill Russell, 7 Wilt, and 6 Shaq. Read off yours.
Yeah, I got 10 Tim Duncan, 9 Bill Russell, 8 Wilt Chamberlain, 7 Larry Bird, and 6 Shaq.
So it's something we had the same group 6 through 10, just in a little bit different order. I know that these last 5 here. Personally, I feel like there's a little bit of a line between 5 and 6, where the top 5 are kind of just pretty much clear cut top 5, in my opinion, at least. And then 6 through 10 is obviously still amazing, but I feel like 1 through 5 is kind of this own select group. I think we both had the same number 5, if I'm not mistaken. But number 5, I have Magic Johnson. We were talking about him a little bit earlier, but I feel like if obviously if everything didn't go down the way it did in the early '90s for him, I feel like he would have even more accolades, more awards, higher up on leaderboards all time. Um, I mean, he was the complete basketball player in the '80s. He could play any position you wanted to. I mean, he played center in the finals one game. Um, this guy was arguably one of the greatest playmakers. I still have him as the greatest point guard ever. I think Steph could make a run later in his career if he gets some more rings, and obviously Steph's the greatest shooter ever. So, but um, just the overall complete play that Magic had in those Showtime Lakers. I feel like he was the Lakers in the '80s, and um, I mean the fact he did all of what he did, yeah, five or six rings, if I'm not mistaken, five,
5.
yeah. Um, in that short time span he played, he didn't play. I think he played 13 years. Um, so it's remarkable to see what he was able to do in such a short time. I mean, he went to the fine, at least won Finals MVP as a rookie, which is just to even think about that nowadays it just sounds insane to say out loud. Um, but Magic was that guy. He kind of led the push too for bigger point guards. I believe he was 6'8" or 6'9". He was a tall guy, um, could pass the ball to anybody anytime on the court, get buckets. I mean, there's not much else you can ask for from Magic Johnson, that he can't do for you. So as far as a complete player, I feel like it's pretty easy for me to put my number 5, and I don't really have a whole lot of complaints there. So I know we've talked mostly about big men this whole show so far. But we're finally getting to some guards. So number 5, I have Magic Johnson.
Yeah, I have Magic Johnson as well. I think it's even. I mean, I don't even know if we really realize this. We have a decent amount of Lakers players already too. On here, I think that's what four now.
Well, if I'm looking at total, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 out of my 10 once played for the Lakers at one point.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and there's a couple in there for the Celtics too. So, I mean, those are the two dynasties of the NBA for sure. But yeah, number 5.
yeah. No, Magic Johnson. I think the nickname Magic's so fitting. I mean, you mentioned. I mean, winning an NBA championship and Finals MVP as a rookie. I mean, that's just no better impact than to just look at that right there. I mean, walking triple double. I mean, at 6'9", could really do it all. Score, pass. I mean, some of his passing. You could make a 40-minute compilation of some of the greatest Magic Johnson passes of all time, and I don't think you'd get bored. I mean, the guy was just a wizard with the basketball. I mean, there you go, Brock. Nickname Magic, but I mean, it's just tremendous. I mean, it's those Laker teams with Magic, James Worthy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, just insane, filled with talent. And I mean, to think he was the ringleader of all that. I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, and I think as equally good as he was on the court, I mean, just as I mean, that people say, he's got a smile that just lights up a room. I mean, charismatic as hell. And I mean, yeah, I think when you look at it, it's hard to. I agree. I think best point guard of all time. I think right now it's probably not even really close
Mm.
between him and Steph. I mean, it's close, but I mean, when you look, I mean, Steph has no Finals MVPs, three rings. So I mean, he's closing in there, but I mean, Magic is just crazy. And I mean, yeah, I think rightfully so, best point guard of all time. I mean, I love Steph. Don't get me wrong, but I think right now in their career, I don't think he's on the level of Magic Johnson.
I agree. That Magic is pretty clear the best point guard ever. but I do think the gap is a little bit smaller than people may think, especially if Steph gets another ring or two, and kind of if he gets a ring with this post Dynasty Warriors team, with a lot of these young guys having to step up and everything, and him being the leader of that group, I feel like that could really make a big impact on Steph's case moving forward.
Would just like to say really quick, I think it's bullshit that Steph has no Finals MVP rings. I mean,
Yeah.
they gave it to Iguodala for the first one for shutting down LeBron, and LeBron averaged like 30 in the finals. So I don't know what the hell Iguodala was doing. Maybe prevent him from getting from 35. But I mean, should arguably at least have had one.
I
And then
agree.
I think when you look at the second series with when they won the second one with Kevin Durant when they beat Cleveland again,
Hmm.
when they swept them 4-0. I think it had Steph not had a bad game two or three, he had a really, really horrible game, and Kevin Durant hit that crazy shot and kind of let him back. I think Steph arguably could have made a case for Finals MVP there too. But I mean, people act like he's played like garbage in the finals. And I mean, yeah, he had that one bad year in 15-16 when they blew the 3-1 lead. But I mean, other than that, the guy's been pretty goddamn solid in the finals. And I mean, it's just unfortunate that he got for sure robbed of one Finals MVP when Iguodala won it. But I think you could make the argument that he could have won. He could have two right now. But I mean, it's hard to look at the numbers that Durant put up in that second title and say that Steph should have got it. But I mean, I just think it's lay off that narrative a little bit because I think Steph definitely did get screwed a little bit with especially the first Finals MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that people talk too much about him being lackluster in the finals, and I don't think that that's necessarily true. I just think when he had another top scorer in the game and potentially of all time, Kevin Durant, with him, and then Klay Thompson out there too. I mean, any of those guys can get hot, so it makes it really easy to take away from the fact that you still put up good numbers. And when you're playing against LeBron every year, LeBron's going to overshadow you with his numbers. So, looking back on it, I think if people really thought about it more, they would realize that he's definitely should at least won, but he definitely does not play lackluster in the finals. Um, he's not going to out there having 50 bombs every night, but you don't expect anybody to do that nowadays. So, um, yeah, I think we're down to the final four here, and we have the same four, but I believe that the order is different here. Um, there's Kobe, Jordan, LeBron, Kareem are those top four, oh, four, not five, four, four guys we each have on our list. Um, so this is where it might get a little interesting to see how we differ here. But number four, I have Kareem, and I think people don't give enough credit to Kareem for what he did in his time. He played, I believe, 22 seasons, 21, 22 seasons. Most points ever. The 6 rings, 6 MVPs. I mean, this guy was dominant in college, went to the pros, and kept the exact same thing going the entire time. Won that chip in Milwaukee. I mean, this guy knew how to get a bucket every single time he got the ball. The sky hook is arguably the most unstoppable shot in basketball, especially when you're 7 feet tall. It's kind of hard to even contest that at that point. Um, I think he's one of the most reliable players as far as if you need to get a bucket and you can get the ball to him in the paint. It doesn't matter who's on the other side; he'll be able to get a bucket somehow. Um, I think people really sleep on Kareem and his impact that he had. Uh, him with those Lakers teams as well. I mean, he was next level, and for a good span of close to a decade, he was no doubt the best basketball player in the world. Um, so I think people will need to think more about Kareem in these conversations. I mean, everyone puts him on their list, but I think he should be in this top five range where um, it's hard to compete with him. So um, number four, I have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah, my number four, I've got Kobe Bean, R.I.P. Mamba. Um, it's just, I mean, I really wasn't. It just, I mean, it's hard to even talk about. I mean, that was such a horrible day in sports.
Yeah.
I mean, God, dude, but yeah, I mean, Kobe, one of the, I mean, I think you look at it, I mean, MJ 2.0, really and truly, I mean, just it absorbed the game from him. An incredible player. I think one of the best scorers of all time. When you look at it, I think it's pretty remarkable. He only won one MVP award in the NBA.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, obviously, I think kind of slowed down there toward the end of his career with the injuries, and then obviously the Achilles and those Laker teams just sucked so bad. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, when he was in his prime with Shaq, I mean, I think they're right up there, best one of the best duos of all time. I think I lean a little bit more towards Michael and Scotty, but that's okay. Listen, I mean, I think that just so many iconic moments. I mean, you think about the when he hit, I think it was against Phoenix in like the first round, and he just one of those the pass to Shaq against Portland in the Western Conference Finals. I mean, just so many iconic moments with Kobe. I mean, going back and forth with those Celtic teams, um, Paul Pierce, the big three in Boston. I mean, Kobe. It's hard. I saw a list. Someone was talking about it on Twitter. Like, if you any top five list that doesn't have Kobe Bryant in it, I don't consider real. And I mean,
Hmm.
I agree. I agree with that. I mean, it was tremendous. I think he's. I mean, second. I mean, second best small shooting guard of all time, obviously behind MJ. But I mean, yeah, did it for so many years. I mean, 18-time All Star. I mean, he was an All Star from 2000 until 2016, just straight ripped him off repeatedly like that. 5-time champ, 2-time Finals MVP. And I think what really cemented Kobe's legacy was, I mean, I think he kind of too had that narrative, like, what are you going to do without Shaq? And then
Hmm.
to get 2 chips without Shaq, I mean, it just, I mean, just kind of prove everybody wrong that he didn't necessarily. I mean, while Shaq was a great number two. I mean, I mean, probably arguably number one on that team when they played. But I mean, he proved that he could go get him on his own, being the main guy, being the alpha. And I mean, yeah, impressive. Not much else to say about Kobe. I think that's. I mean, this is, yeah, just it's unfortunate that he's not still here. And I mean, that was just such a brutal day.
Yeah. I have Kobe at number 3 on my list, and I kind of clumped together LeBron, MJ, and Kobe, um, as like the three goats in basketball. I thought that way for a little while now, and then Kobe's passing kind of put that into perspective for me more. Um, and it's I agree 100%. I was going to mention that too. Him winning without Shaq, those back-to-back titles, where he had good teams around him. But I mean, Pau Gasol was a fantastic player, but he wasn't a Shaq level or a Scottie Pippen level all-time player like those three peats had back then. So looking at the way Kobe was able to adapt his game to, I mean, he came in as the slasher who didn't have a consistent jump shot, and then as he got older, he realized that he couldn't be jumping out the gym anymore, and he was. I personally think he is the best difficult shot maker of all time. Um, I mean, there were so many teams in the mid 2000s after Shaq left where he's playing with Smush Parker and Kwame Brown. He's putting up 40 a night, shooting over double teams from 3 point, and it's it's still hard for me to fathom that he's not here anymore, even though it's been 2 years now. Uh, and I feel like he's left such a strong impact on the game, even before his passing. Um, I know I got a little teary eyed when they were doing the NBA 75 during halftime of the All Star game, and he wasn't there. But um, yeah, I feel like a lot of people have uh, Jordan, LeBron, Kobe as those three go echelon players up there. Um, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to talk about now, just thinking about it. But um, I feel confident putting Kobe at 3. I don't have any hesitation about it. I made this list years ago and I put him at 2, but I feel confident about my top 2 now, obviously. But um, yeah, I think just level of consistency he was able to have with throughout the injuries too. He had a lot of injuries in his career. Um, that kind of lingered around. Nothing extremely major outside of the Achilles, but lots of stuff that would just him just getting banged up and him playing through it. You knew you could get 30 on him a night, and arguably one of the most clutch players, if it's not the most clutch player that we've seen. I mean, you can go look up game-winning compilations by him, and it just goes on for a while. Um, I mean, he had everything that you wanted in a basketball player. Uh, if you go and look up some stories about his motivation in basketball and the Mamba mentality that he had, I mean, this guy, I remember hearing a story. He was his trainer got a call at like 2:34 in the morning, and he was fast asleep, and his trainer woke up, and it was Kobe, and he was like, "It's like, yo, can you be down at the gym in like 20 minutes?" And he's like, "I mean, I guess, is there a problem?" He's like, "No, I just want to get some shots up." And this dude would literally work out play basketball for 3 hours, take like an hour or two break, and then go back at it again. And there's very few players that have had the work ethic that Kobe has had and the drive to be as successful as he has been. Um, and then I think he had the greatest farewell game of all time, putting up 60. I remember watching that game, and in the fourth quarter when they were down a good chunk there late in the game against that Utah team, and he just made every single shot he put up. And every single shot, the more he made him, I just couldn't believe that it was actually happening. And then that final dagger is like, this felt like it was something out of a video game. I mean, it just didn't feel real. So I feel confident with Kobe up there with Jordan and LeBron as the that go echelon players. I don't really have any reservations about that. And I've been a Kobe. Kobe was the guy who got me into basketball. He's the reason I'm even sitting here right now. Um, so uh, yeah, it means a lot to me. But Kobe at number 3, and I'll end my Kobe rant there.
Yep, I've got Kareem at my number 3. It's tough. I think this one was one of the hardest ones to pick on my list. I mean, it was so tough. I mean, both players are incredible, but I think I just give the nod. I gave the nod to Kareem. I mean, like he was on so many great Laker teams, and I mean, was I mean the leads the NBA all time in scoring. And I feel like he kind of like that Tim Duncan doesn't really get enough love. I feel like he kind of gets pushed on the back burner sometimes. But I mean, you have to respect what the guy did. I mean, to go to win a championship in Milwaukee and then followed up with 5 more in LA. I mean, like I said, I think it's all about, he has the postseason accolades, he's got the individual accolades, and I mean, his name's rightfully so at the top of the record books in scoring. I mean, he's got the most unguardable move and shot in the NBA. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. I mean, at 7'2", no one's blocking that, not even close. And I mean, again, he was playing against really, 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 really good competition. I mean, and yeah, I think again, one of those guys doesn't necessarily get enough respect as he deserves. But I've got Kareem narrowly, just barely, above Kobe at number 3.
Yeah. I mean, I disagree, but I can see your reasoning. And a lot of it's based on the perspective of how we and how much we put weight into different things. And we're thinking about this list because it's hard to come up with a list like this, taking all the factors that are put together over the course of these guys' careers. It's really hard to really fathom it. So this is kind of the best that we were able to do in a somewhat short time span because again, there's so much that goes into this. But yeah, so obviously it comes down now to the top 2, and I think we might have a little bit of a debate here. I might ruffle some feathers, and I don't care. I'm not doing this for the clout or the attention, but I personally do believe that LeBron James is the best player of all time. I understand if the people just turn off the podcast right now. I'm cool with it. Number 2, I have Jordan. Number 1, I have LeBron. And I'll give some reasoning, and then I'll let you say your piece. Um, I look at it from a couple different angles. Uh, Obviously, Jordan, no doubt in this conversation, a lot of people have him as the GOAT, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I'm looking at LeBron's consistency, and what he's doing right now is kind of unprecedented. At this point, Jordan was gambling at home, so um, I look at their commitment to the game of basketball. Um, LeBron has you could argue, but outside of Michael Jordan doing the his Jordan brand shoes with Nike, LeBron having one of the biggest impacts in all of sports. Um, so there's a lot that goes into it. I hear the 6-0 conversations all the time. Um, for Jordan not losing in the finals, and I think LeBron won the two hardest championships in NBA history. That 3-1 against the Warriors. Uh, Even I'm not even a Cavaliers fan, and I'll go back and watch the highlights of LeBron and Kyrie in games 5, 6, and 7, and when they had that comeback, and that was arguably the greatest thing I've seen in basketball because that Warriors team was untouchable for the entire season. Um, they lost 9 games. They had the best record of all time, and then for LeBron to go in and pull off that comeback never happened before. Um, I mean, LeBron can get to the basket every single time, and he has been doing this for almost 20 years now. Every single time can get to the basket and get that layup every single time, and nobody can stop him. Um, the heat checks this guy has are unreal. His ability to transform his game as he got older to where he can still get to the bucket anytime he wants, but also has become a fairly reliant shooter from deep. Um, and the amount of weight this guy has had on his shoulders. I mean, I feel like LeBron, who's going to end up probably number one all time in points, towards the very top of the list in assists. He holds a ton of the playoff records. The argument about the finals record, which I do agree doesn't look fantastic on the record board. Um, I think that there's a lot more that goes into it uh, than what it may look like on the outside. Having to face those Warriors teams was pretty insane. Those Spurs teams had a budding superstar in Kawhi on them when he lost that one. And if you look at the teams that he played with when he was in Cleveland, Cleveland gave him zero help, and Michael Jordan ended up getting Scottie Pippen, who I think is underrated as an individual player just because of how he played with Michael Jordan. And then Dennis Rodman, who was the best rebounder ever on that team. So the way I look at it is LeBron did just as much with less help. He's been more consistent throughout his career. Oh, and the other championship I was going to mention as the hardest one was the bubble, is because of everything that was going on. Having to take that hiatus in the season and then come back in this whole new circumstance, locked in this thing for a month and a half plus, and go out there and win a ring. We never know when the guy's going to be stuck out because of COVID or and protocols and stuff like that. People call it the Mickey Mouse ring. And then, I mean, I get the jokes, but I do think, I mean, for a lot of NBA players say this, that this was the hardest championship just because of the circumstances that they were put into. And that routine is just totally gone. You have to restart everything. And this is kind of like a dream scenario where you put everyone in the gym and say, all right, who's going to win like right now, you know? So I think LeBron's had close to, if not the same amount of impact on the game of basketball. It's been consistent for nearly 20 years now. And uh, Michael Jordan, I mean, I'm not denying anything he's done. The 5 MVP, 6 titles. I mean, you guys already know all this stuff. I don't have to say it. Uh, I think it's a very, very close race up there. But when I'm looking at the all around picture and the consistency, um, nothing that worries me about Jordan compared to LeBron is the year and a half it took off for baseball. I feel like there's something shady going on there that we don't know about because a lot of things have been not really disclosed about it. Um, and it made me sometimes worry about his commitment to the game. If he just kind of got tired of basketball at some point, because he left him and played baseball for a year and a half, and then he came back on the Wizards, and that was just really weird. So again, I'm not doubting anything Michael Jordan did for the game at all, but I'm looking at it from the bigger picture, and I think at the end of the day, I have LeBron at number one. So I'll rest my case there. Feel free to yell at me all you want, but I have Jordan at 2 and LeBron at 1. So give me your take, and let's hear what let's hear what you got to bring to the table, and don't hold back on me.
It's hard. It's hard, man. I mean, I'm a Bulls fan. I'm going to leave all personal bias aside, but I mean, we've talked about, I mean, MJ, the guy is a winner. I mean, 6 for 6 in the finals, 6 finals MVPs, was that guy in Chicago. Everybody knew who was going to get the ball late in the game, and no one could do a damn thing about it. I mean, you watched the last ring he won in '98. Gassed, can't play, no legs left. You saw him in that fourth quarter struggling, made one of the biggest defensive plays of all time, stealing the ball from Karl Malone on the block. I will say the chase down block does beat it out. I'll give LeBron the credit there. But, I mean, steals the ball, comes down the floor, dagger, rips the heart out of Utah once again. I mean, it's just so hard for me to put LeBron over Jordan when, I mean, LeBron's been to the finals 10 times, 4 and 6, which, I mean, four rings, nothing to slouch at. But, I mean, guy's got a below 500 record in the finals. And if you want to get really technical, I mean, you can argue that the finals he won in 2013, Ray Allen saved his ass, and he'd be 3 and listen, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying the Spurs choked. If you really want to look at it and get technical like that, he could be 3 and 7. I will say LeBron by far and away second best player in NBA history. But I mean, when you look at how good Jordan was, season in, season out, 10-time scoring champ, and I mean, everyone's like, oh, LeBron, better rebounder, better passer than Jordan. I mean, Jordan's still not a slouch for his career. I mean, he's 36 and 5, getting the shit beat out of him every night. I mean, the era that he played in. I mean, to do that, I want to look and see really quick how many times he played. He played 82 games in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons, and a couple other times he was at 81, 80. So I mean, to just go in there, and I mean the beating that he took against Detroit when they lost in 89 and 90 in the Eastern Conference, I mean, toughened him up. It really did. And I mean, you talk about the motivation to come back and do that. I mean, I think and I just want to step back. I mean, well, Jordan won so he won 5 MVPs. You could legitimately make the argument that from every year he was in the NBA in the 90s, he could have won MVP. I mean, he was by far and away the best player in the NBA, and it wasn't even close. I mean, you think about how good some of the teams he went up against were. I mean, the Jazz are probably the greatest NBA team to never get a ring. And why didn't they get a ring? Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley's Suns team, loaded with Hall of Fame talent. Charles Barkley is a monster. Why didn't they get a ring? Michael Jordan. I mean, just if the Bulls when the Bulls had that core going and they were all together, no one was beating Chicago. It just wasn't going to happen. Michael Jordan wouldn't let it happen. He never got to a Game 7 in the finals, ever. Never even sniffed defeat in the finals. And I mean, I just think when you look at it like that, I mean, Jordan, better scorer. I'll give it to you. LeBron's a better rebounder and a better passer, but Jordan was a significantly better defender, one of the best two-way players. I think the greatest two-way player probably of all time. And I mean, to have that much load on his shoulders, night in, night out. I mean, some of the most iconic moments of all time. Who's the one doing it? Michael Jordan, the flu game, the shot heard around the world, 98 finals, the dream team in the Olympics. I mean, he's that guy. And I mean, Houston, you can go ahead and thank Jordan's retirement, suspension, whatever the hell it was after he three-peated. But if Jordan doesn't retire, leave the sport for a year and a half, 2 years, Chicago goes 8 for 8. And I mean, I think if Jordan adds, I think that's the thing. I mean, like, yeah, LeBron is ultimately going to pass MJ in a lot of these categories, especially scoring. But again, I mean, Jordan took who retires in their prime like that and steps away from the sport for whatever reason it was. But I mean, it's just, I think that took away a full season worth of even more accolades, probably another championship that he would have added. And I mean, this is my favorite debate in sports, talking MJ and LeBron, because I mean, there's just so much back and forth that can happen. But I mean, when you just break it down from that, I mean, the guy, again, I just keep hearing it, had 6 or 6 in the finals, the most clutch player of all time. There's no one else you want with the ball in your hand. Sure as hell is not LeBron. I can't remember how many, I can't, off the top of my head, I cannot tell you a clutch shot that he's had to win an NBA Finals game. Just sitting here thinking about it. I mean, and I mean, MJ, every single time was him. If they were going to win or lose the game, which they were going to win, it was in MJ's hands. And I mean, he delivered. I think he's the most clutch player in all of sports. And I mean, I think he rightfully sits atop his throne, can smoke his cigars, I think he took what you just said personally. And I mean, yeah, I think people got a lot more. I mean, I know in quarantine, I mean, every Sunday I was looking forward to The Last Dance. And I really think that kind of gave people a little more behind the scenes look at what went into that dynasty. And people probably came out that, oh, Jordan was such a dick. Jordan was such a jerk. This, and this. The guy wanted to win. I mean, he wanted to win, and he did. I mean, it's hard to look at what he did when the game mattered the most, in the clutch, in the biggest moments, and to do it on both sides of the floor. Just there's not much else I feel like really to say. I mean, the GOAT, my GOAT. I mean, LeBron can be the sheep, the Billy Goat, whatever the heck. But I mean, listen, I'm not saying that one day, but I mean, there's nothing to slouch at for LeBron to be the second best NBA player of all time.
Yeah. I can't lie. It is not an easy decision to make, standing by one or the other. And actually like going out there and picking one, because for the past couple of years, I've said in my head, I'm just gonna appreciate greatness and let those top three of LeBron, Jordan, and Kobe just be those three-headed GOAT and just move on. But when I decided to sit down and actually make the list for the show and have a clear-cut number one, I felt like I needed to do it. It's, again, not all the arguments you made are valid. I I have a hard time arguing with you so much, because I feel like we both make pretty good claims for each other that we can't really like get into heated debates where none of us sound stupid. Like when you'd hear Stephen A. or Skip on First Take back in the day, one of them would say something really stupid, and then they would just start yelling at each other. Like when Max Kellerman wanted Iguodala to shoot the final shot, like it's super easy to yell at. But in this debate, we've heard it go on for years, and it will go on for years. And there are biases for this debate for everybody. But yeah, I feel like it's nothing we can really say to change each other's minds about this. And I think everyone has their own opinions on these. So I'm sure I'll hear some flack, because I know a lot of our listeners are Illinois people, Bulls fans, who are going to get on my coattail for putting LeBron ahead of them. But I will say this: I do think that LeBron would have done just as well with that quote unquote rough era. I know people call him a flopper a lot. In that '90s era where people were saying basketball was a lot rougher, I think LeBron would have done just as fine, and put up very similar numbers to Jordan in that regard. Um, I think Jordan was blessed with the opportunity that the Bulls gave him, um, with Pippen and Rodman and Kukoc and those teams. Those teams had some all timers on them. Um, Obviously, we had LeBron play for the Heat, for the Heatles, and um, he's played with guys like Kyrie and Kevin Love. I don't think those guys stack up in terms of Scotty and Rodman. Um, it's it is hard because a lot of my life I've said Jordan was number one, and I've come to change my mind recently over the last couple of years. Just watching the consistency of LeBron, and um, I do agree he doesn't have as many memorable finals moments. Like he doesn't have a bunch of game winning shots. Um, but the thing about LeBron is I feel like he's a lot more willing to trust his teammates and give up the rock. In scenarios we've seen a lot of them. I remember watching the 2020 finals. LeBron passed to Danny Green for the three that would have won the finals, and he clanked it when LeBron could have taken a shot in his zone. And LeBron, I feel like, is just as much of a facilitator as he is a scorer, which doesn't give him the opportunity to shoot as many crazy buzzer beaters like Jordan did. But yeah, man, this is tough. Um, I feel fairly confident in my pick though. And I'm going to stand by it. I feel like some people's minds might change over the next couple of years when LeBron's career starts winding down, but um, I'd argue he's left just as big of an impact on the game. I mean, people were going to his high school games, and they were aired on ESPN. Um, and it was like a spectacle to watch this high school basketball player play, back when he was playing back then. So it's debate that will never really end. And let us know your opinions on this. Do you think we both gave decent arguments? Don't let your bias get too much into it because I know it's easy to do so. But um, I got nothing against Michael Jordan, obviously. I did think he is the clear cut top two. Those two are the easy top two, and I think we can both agree on that, regardless of how we order it. So, um, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about that topic? Did you want to clap back at me about anything else, or you feeling?
No, I just got two quick things. The first one, I think, whichever whatever side of the debate you're on, whether you're a LeBron guy or an MJ guy, just step back and realize that LeBron's in what, year 19 now. Even if you don't like the guy, just sit back and respect what the hell he's done for the game. I mean, we're not gonna have him around for too much longer, and I mean, it's gonna suck in 5-6 years when all these kids we watch growing up are out of the league. But I mean, just take what LeBron's done and appreciate it. I mean, he's been a great ambassador for the game of basketball, and I mean, to have as much pressure as he did coming out of high school. I mean, they were calling him the next Michael Jordan as an 18-year-old coming out of Akron, Ohio. And I mean, how many times have you heard that? This kid's going to be the next big thing. This kid's the next phenom. And LeBron lived up to it and then some. And I mean, it's just what I mean. You love or hate the guy, you have to just sit back and respect that he was able to take all that hype, has taken some incredible criticism. And I didn't even mention, just hashing back on, I can't believe I forgot this, but I remember the first finals he made in 2011 against the Dallas Mavericks. And I mean, the guy, I think he had like 8 points in one of the closeout games and was just stuck standing in the corner. I hate that I did this to myself, that I bring it up here with some nice words and then now I'm going to have to bring it back down. But I will, I'm not even going to go there, but very, very lackluster first final performance for LeBron. I think that's where a lot of people,
He went to the finals with the Cavs too first.
Okay, sorry, but like the first finals with
the Heat,
nothing he could have done with that Spurs team was ridiculously good. That Cavs team sucked. It was LeBron and a bunch of ball boys. But
Ilgauskas and Eric Snow and
Yeah,
Larry Hughes. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But yeah, the first finals he went to in Miami when Dallas beat him, I mean, he had a brutal time. Was just getting annihilated by everybody on sports talk shows, and I mean, rightfully so. I mean, he played horrible. I mean, he went full James Harden, put the mask on, went ghost mode, and wasn't seen. And Dallas took care of business. But I mean, the way he responded after that to go back to back with Miami, I mean, it does go to show that I mean that weighed heavy on him. Um, but I mean, I would just like to. I feel like there's some people out there who nitpick at MJ and say, oh, he didn't win anything without Scottie Pippen. Name me one team in the NBA that's won a championship with one great Hall of Fame player. There isn't one. You need somebody else.
I
I
think
mean, it's
there
just.
is. I mean,
But I mean,
who else in the Cavs team outside LeBron when they had? I mean, Kyrie's not a Hall of Famer. Kevin Love's not a Hall of Famer,
okay,
and they came
yeah,
back
but
and
I
beat the
mean,
greatest team ever,
yeah, but when
arguably.
I get that, but until like the teams that Jordan was playing with before he got Pippen and they started winning were terrible. I mean, the Bulls. He was telling that story in The Last Dance. He walked in his rookie year and they were doing coke and smoking weed in the hotel in Peoria
Peoria, yeah.
back in the 80s. And I mean, I just think it's people who say, oh, like I mean, even getting, I mean, yeah, LeBron had to go form a super team to win his first title, but I mean, it's hard to win a championship by yourself. And I mean, I'll give LeBron credit; he did put that Cavs team on his back and took him to the finals. But I mean, you saw what happened, and I mean, the teams that Jordan ran into in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the Celtics were ridiculous. The Pistons were ridiculous, and I mean, he needed. I mean, he needed that guy. I mean, Kobe for a while needed Shaq. I mean, Shaq needed Kobe. Kobe needed Shaq. LeBron needed D Wade. Steph needed Kevin Durant to an extent. I mean, everybody needs every great player. I feel like there's an equally as great player right there alongside them. And I mean, that's just. I mean, I think that criticism doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. In terms of, I mean, I feel like, I mean, you look at all these teams that have won titles, 99% of them have had two incredibly good players right alongside, taking some of the scoring defensive and attention off of that great player. And I mean, Scottie Pippen, I mean, it's hard to say that those two aren't the greatest duo in NBA history, but I mean, I just think that those were just my last 2 points. That respect what LeBron's done, and man, give the guy credit. And then I mean the whole, oh, if you're such a great player, you should be able to do it by yourself argument. I just think that's personally kind of dumb. Um, but yeah, that's my piece. I'm happy with the list. I'm sure I'm going to get just equally as much hate for some of the things that I said. But I mean, hey, what do we got? Gotta have thick skin.
Yeah. I do give Jordan his flowers as well for the basketball culture that he created during his time as well. It took basketball kind of international. I mean, everyone and their moms was turning TVs on to watch Jordan play, and there's no doubt that he revolutionized basketball to the level of popularity and worldwide success that it is today. So, I have zero doubts about Jordan being in that top two with LeBron, but this could be something that we revisit down the road, and maybe it changes up a little bit. I don't know, but it's I feel like it was a healthy little dialogue here. But neither of us got to. I thought you were gonna get more angry at me than that. But I guess if I would have told you on the spot and not showed you my list beforehand, you probably would have got a little more angry on the spot there. But yeah, these were our lists, and we both feel pretty confident in it. Let us know your opinion on it, what you would change, your top 10 list, who's overrated, underrated. You know what to do. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and everything at Gone Pro Pod. That's where we let you know when episodes are up and stuff like that. So, um, yeah. Any closing remarks, Brock, about these lists or anything in general?
I had some time. I slept off my anger last night after I found out you had LeBron ahead of MJ. But no, I mean, like I said, the points you made, it's hard to argue. I mean, as long as it's those two at the top, I feel like people. I mean, it's hard to. Those are the clear. I mean, as long as you're not doing it, saying something outrageous and putting somebody other than those two. I mean, Kobe, I get it, but I mean, I just feel like those are the two clear and away best two players in NBA history. And I mean, I'm just more along the side of if a guy if a guy's undefeated in the biggest moments and the biggest game, it's hard to put him below somebody who has yes matched some of the success on in terms of career numbers and career accolades, but is 4-6 in in the NBA Finals and has a below 500 record. But I mean, I have no problem saying LeBron is the second best player of all time, and there's absolutely nothing to slouch at. I mean, think about how many players have came through the NBA, and you're number two, and he still has a couple of years left. I'm not saying that's going to change my opinion or anything, but I mean, it's still not. I mean, nothing to slouch at whatsoever.
Yeah, and you can't totally fault Jordan for having such a great team around him. So when you say when I did make that argument earlier about having Pippen and Rodman, I mentioned that several times, but you also can't blame him for just having a great team built around him. You can't say, oh well, trade Scotty and get worse, he can win another ring. That doesn't make sense. So there is a level to that argument as well. Um, and I guess you can put some of the blame on some of those GMs on the Cavaliers and stuff like that. And these Lakers today just piss me off. But yeah, it's I feel like if you don't have those guys as your top two, I don't know what else to say. I mean I'm one of the biggest Kobe fans. Every day I rock the chain with the Mamba on it if you've seen that on the episodes. So and I put him at number 3. So I I I I feel like I have a good grasp on it and try and stay as unbiased as possible. But yeah, I think this was good. I'm glad you slept your anger off last night so that we didn't get some headphone warnings to the listeners today. But yeah, I'm happy about this. I feel good about it, and I'm ready to take on any heat that we get. So thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate all your support. Um, if you want to see other top 10 lists like this, let us know what else you want to see. We're thinking that these might be a semi-frequent thing that we do that could be pretty fun. Kind of change things up a little bit, especially when there's not as much to talk about in current news. Um, so yeah, let us know. And I believe we'll probably be back later this week. I know last week I said in that episode that we weren't going to be that we were the one later that week, but we ended up switching up a little bit since not much had happened in news that week. So just stay tuned. Like I said, follow us at Gone Pro Pod, and we'll let you know what's going on. But thank you as always for listening to episode 16 of the Should Have Gone Pro podcast. Everyone have a great week, and we will see you later.